Hello, my name is Anna Meenan. I am the Programme Manager of the Traditional Farm Buildings Grant Scheme, and this is a brief recap of the webinar that we gave on the information for the applicant if you're interested in applying for the scheme. And how we're doing it is we're doing it through the online form. So I hope that will be particularly helpful to you. And I suppose a brief recap. You might know that we, the Heritage Council, administer this grant scheme on behalf of the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. And the principal objective of this scheme is to ensure that traditional farm buildings and other related structures that contribute to the character of the landscape and are of significant heritage value are conserved for agricultural use. So that's landscape, heritage and use, all important. All matter. Now, just in the first instance, that contact information in terms of applicant details. Now, this is a template application that we have open at the moment. The applicant is the farmer whose name matches the herd number held on Department of Agriculture records. We know that there are some who will seek help from other family members or their farm planner in making the application. And that's perfectly okay, but please ensure that the contact details are those of the farmer. And if you, the farmer, do not have an email address, please ensure that the email address that is provided is accessible to you. And a gentle reminder, as we scroll down the page, the scheme is only open to farmers participating in and accepted into one of those following Department of Agriculture schemes. Acres, particular EIP, calls 1, 2 and 3, Hen Harrier, Pearl Russell and the Burren Project, and also the Organic Farming Scheme. So you must be a participating member in one of those schemes. And again, in terms of when you're providing your herd number, that must match the name with Department of Agriculture records. So when you've completed that section, you just save draft and go on to the next tab, which is project information. Now, we hope this will be quite clear. What is the name of your project? It could be your 19th century walled garden. It could be your 1920s barn. You decide and tell us what you're actually applying for. Now, in terms of telling us what project you are applying for, this is a tick box, so not too much typing at all. And I just want to point out two particular aspects. One, that third one down, reinstatement of previously existing features. Every year we receive applications for unroofed structures. Restoration works are considered a low priority under this grant scheme. There's certainly a place for restoration, but this scheme's particular focus is on the conservation of existing fabric, the repair and reuse of existing materials. Buildings that have fallen into disrepair and or have an uncertain use may require larger sums of money, and the benefit of the initial funding could be lost very quickly and not represent good value. So please bear all of this in mind and the criteria that we use for unroofed structures. And also, the other factor is in terms of that last tick box down, is that you do not have to apply for a building. While it's called the Traditional Farm Buildings Grant Scheme, we can support more than buildings on the scheme. This year, we particularly encourage applications for the repair of traditional farming structures other than buildings. And to support this effort, it is intended that 500,000 be specifically allocated this year for the repair of these other related farm structures, such as walls, gate pillars and gates, walled orchards, cobbled yards, and masonry dunksteads. And you, of course, could be applying for both a gate as well as a building. So just tick whichever of those categories above apply to your project, we know that there could be more than one. Now, where is the building or other related structure located? Please tell us where. It must be where you are farming. Also an air code, if there is one. Of course, not all do. And in terms of the map, please upload a site location map, such as an Ordnance Survey map, map from our Heritage Maps website, a farm plan map, a Google map. But please ensure to tick or mark with an X where your project is located on the map. Now, under which local authority, again, that's just a tick box. You have certain options there in terms of the county. Now, there's three different aspects there in terms of use. Use is important. These buildings, these gates, these walled orchards, they were all built, constructed to serve a useful purpose. They endure, they deserve to be used. One of the reasons that the Department of Agriculture fund this scheme is that they recognise that these historic buildings can still serve as useful assets for the farm. Now, if I just scroll down again now to the essential repairs. Again, no typing here. It's just, again, ticking what's relevant to your project. And in terms of the works, you should consider the sort of work that needs to be done and how urgent it is. You will see our emphasis on the word repair. That is the focus of the scheme. The work should be the minimum necessary, carrying out a repair to fix what is wrong, but not setting out to do too much work. We do this because we are focused on keeping historic fabric and historic materials for both heritage and environmental reasons. Now we scroll down and we move down, and this is towards the photographs section. And just generally in terms of photographs, what we would say is photographs the size of thumbprints aren't helpful. Several good, clear photographs are better than a string of photographs that may tell us nothing. We don't know your project and will not be visiting it at application stage. The photographs, they shine a light on the project. And just in terms of that last photo request of the building or other related structure in its wider surroundings in the countryside, we want to see it in relation to its surroundings. That is important because if you remember, the objective of the scheme is to ensure that traditional farm buildings and other related structures that contribute to the character of the landscape and are of significant heritage value are conserved for agricultural use. So the character of the landscape, that is why we need that photograph. Now, again, we just save draft there and you move on to the next tab, which is finance. Now, in terms of finance, it'll be just a question of pressing on add details. And then you'll do the plus sign here. And that will be a case where you're putting in, it might be a quotation from a builder, or you might be doing your own in terms of own time, and the rate for own labour is €15.52. That's Department of Agriculture rates, they haven't changed. And also in terms of materials. So that might be just one line you have there, or it could be a few lines. What we want to know is that you've reasonably estimated it, that you know in terms of, or have an idea how much the cost will be, that it is not a figure plucked from the air. Now, I'm just going to close that and back to finance. And just to note that the minimum grant that can be offered is €4,000. So the smallest project that could be funded will cost in the region of around €5,500. And of course, the maximum grant is 30,000, but please don't think you have to hit the maximum grant. Focus on what needs to be done. And while we've always said also that grants can be up to 75%, there may be some grants that might not be, just to point that out, up to 75%. Now, again, when you've done that, save draft and moving on to the next tab, heritage and public benefit. Now, in this section, a lot of the responses here will relate to Appendix 1 in the guidance in terms of heritage interest, projects that will best demonstrate public benefit, best value including value for money, habitat value or potential, and climate change mitigation. So this is where responses will really matter in terms of how your project will be scored. Because if you think of it, it's called the Traditional Farm Buildings Grant Scheme, but heritage interest achieves a score of 20. But each of the others, public benefit, climate change mitigation, best value, including value for money, and habitat value or potential, all can achieve a top score of 20. So I don't want to go through each of the criteria here because we have given guidance in it in the appendix. So I would suggest reading the Appendix 1 when you're looking at responding to these. But also, that's just guidance. You know your project better than us. You'll know it better than any. So please just tell us what you think in terms of your project, in terms of heritage interest, in terms of wildlife, in terms of climate change. And just to point out in particular about the public benefit, you can see that we ask, is there a public view of your project? And if your answer is yes, we ask you to provide a photograph of it. But just to be clear, we have and do support projects that are not visible from the road. But no matter what, you must demonstrate public benefits. So if your project is not visible from a public view, you must tell us what you will do in terms of telling the public about your project. And again, we give tips on that in the guidance document. It'll be in an Appendix 1. And we do this because it is public funding, and we also work to raise public appreciation of heritage. So your application must demonstrate strong public benefit. Now, again, when you've responded here, save the draft and then move on to permissions. Now, in terms of permissions, it would be a question of yes or no to the questions about whether it's a protected structure, whether it's taking place in an area of special area of conservation, or whether it's a recorded monument. And also the other aspect there is if you are not the owner of the building, and we know there are sometimes cases like that, you must upload the permission, written consent from the owner for the application. So if you as the applicant are not the owner of the building, the owner must provide written consent and it must be uploaded there. Now, again, when you've answered all of that, please just save draft and move on to the final step, which is declarations. So please do read through what you are agreeing to before you sign. That's really important. Really want you to be able to understand in terms of what's required by you and also what's expected from us if you are going to apply to the scheme. And lastly, I suppose what I would say is that we do say it should be easy and cheap to make an application, and we mean that, but it will take time. Anything between 1 to 4 hours is the most common time frame. But remember, you can do one tab, save draft, shut down your computer and come back to it to another evening. You don't have to do it all in the one go. But do not press submit until all is finished. All we're asking is that you answer the questions and provide what is asked for, the particular photographs, a site location map, and a quotation or cost estimates. And please ensure that all is submitted online by the deadline, which is 5 p.m. the 10th of March, 2025. And I'll just end with, if you do have any questions, please do telephone or email us. We'll be very happy to help. Thank you very much, and I hope this has been helpful. And please, please read the guidance document while or before you are submitting your application.